Draft. You're dumb. You're ugly. Your shoes are stupid. Um, yeah, I'm mocking the draft. Producer. Welcome to a very special episode of the Dynasty Pulse, right here on the Fantasy Sports Advice Network, and also on the Undroppables, and on terrestrial radio 101.5 FM, talking West Tennessee. I'm your host, bigz. With me is Grindberg. We are, as the Canadians say, flying solo, meaning there are two of us. Today we are going to be doing a Dynasty Startup Superflex mock draft with some of the best minds in the fantasy space. How you doing, Grindberg?
I'm doing good, man. Unfortunately, we don't have our three other co-hosts here today. It was just some scheduling conflicts, but they will be back with us next week when we finish off our tiers. Last week we did the wide receivers. The week before we did running backs, and then prior to that we did quarterbacks. So next week we'll finish it off with the tight ends. But today, bigz, we got a big time mock draft happening here. We're doing a startup. I'm going to share the screen and let's get the show rolling here.
Let's get
Because
this
we got
row on the show.
Let's do it. Okay, I'm going to get the draft started and we are off. All right, bigz.
Producer, you're on the clock.
Producer, you're on the clock. Shelty's rocking right now. But you know what? Let's talk about position here, bigz.
Let's talk about.
You and I, we're kind of on the ends. You're in the back end. I'm in the top end of this draft. And when we talk about a startup, what is the thing that you're focusing most on when you're on that latter half there?
I am focused on watching what the board presents. If we're going quarterback early, if quarterbacks start flying in the first 7 picks, maybe that's a time to kind of avoid quarterback. If no quarterbacks are going, then maybe it's a time to step up. I chose this back 11 just because I want to see how the board presents itself, but I would prefer to be in a power position up where you are, the 103, so I can possibly start trading back.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, right now we're not in the trades at this stage of the game. We're doing a startup, but it's more so to see how everybody aligns down here. And yeah, I like this spot here in a startup for me. I'm going with my guy, Jaden Daniels. I've picked him in a lot of drafts at the 101, 102. Having him slide here to the 103 was a great situation here. Obviously, with a guy going auto with his first pick there, Schulte. Joe Burrow went a bit earlier than normal, but oftentimes we'll see a mixture of Lamar Jackson headed there as well. So at the top end of this draft, it's pretty normal to see 4 quarterbacks go off the board. Now I'm interested to see what this next pick brings at the 105. We've had a really good spell here of quarterbacks. What would your strategy be here, there, bigz, if you were sitting here and the first 4 quarterbacks go?
So as the quarterbacks are gone, now I'm looking to go hero running back.
Okay, and you wouldn't go for a top end wide receiver like a Ja'Marr Chase, with the longevity, or you're looking to just solidify this, Bijan or Gibbs at that stage?
It depends on the point system. Depends on the scoring settings in the league, especially if this is like a 4-point passing touchdown. Quarterback becomes much less important. Bijan is the next off the board. So right now I'm looking at super young running backs, and since it's a startup, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I get me some. Well, I'm going to get Ashton Genty. That is a 100% smash for me, especially back here. And then I'm going to hope that the 12 goes quarterback wide receiver and allows me to take Jahmyr Gibbs with my second pick.
So you want to go double heavy running back here, get your two young studs, and that's not as so much of a popular strategy in the dynasty space as far as longevity goes. So a lot of guys are afraid of that. Investing in a running back position, which sometimes dries up a bit sooner than other positions, and obviously they retire a bit quicker based off their shelf life. So you're obviously not scared of that, Biggs.
No, and the thing for me is that I find it hardest to acquire running backs in Dynasty. There tend to be fewer who have the potential to, maybe make a big play at some point in their career. Wide receiver careers are longer. You have guys that break out in year 3, year 5, what have you. It's a lot easier for me to acquire wide receivers and quarterbacks than it is running backs. We've had some guests on the show that have said in your rookie drafts, you pile up running backs, right? And then in a startup, I'm kind of looking to do the same thing. I'm looking at the youngest running backs that are out there, the ones who have the potential to have incredibly early career breakouts. Then I'm holding on to a pretty rich stock. And when that happens, they become more valuable down the line because there are fewer of them and they're harder to acquire. So I see a couple of quarterbacks that I'm going to be targeting later on in the rounds who bring rushing upside. They're kind of that cheat code. They're still young, but they're not going to be drafted in the first round. They still will be available to me. So I have to look at running back. And then wide receivers late. We're talking 12 to 24 wide receivers that have the potential to be a top 12, to be a wide receiver one in fantasy. And I like taking my chances later. But running backs, I am into hero RB.
So you're a hero RB strategist, and maybe for some of our newer listeners, can you explain that strategy to everybody?
Well, I'm about to miss Jahmyr Gibbs because this person is on auto pick, which is kind of, and that's Coach. So thanks, Coach, for going on auto pick. Unless he's got his rankings kind of squirrely or whatever.
Yeah.
If that's the case, then I'm gonna settle on Malik Neighbors. Okay, so Hero RB is basically loading up. Oh, there it is. Loading up on the your potential top 5, top 6 running backs as early as possible, and a lot of times in redraft that means taking 2 running backs in the first 3 rounds. I like that because I mean at this point I have 2 running backs with very, very good potential career arcs. We know what Jahmyr Gibbs can do on a points per game basis when he is by himself. And Ashton Genty presents as somebody who's going to be a career workhorse, a 3 down back. He's got pass catching ability. They were just talking about it in the press conferences today. Geno Smith is really excited about Ashton Genty's ability to catch the ball. And so those are going to be the foundation of this team. I might even, when we come to the 3rd round reversal, I might even grab me another one.
There you go. Well, that's a bold strategy here. When you got third round reversal, this is a super flex league here, Big. So you're not concerned about the quarterbacks drying up at any stage here.
I'm not. I feel like there's a lot of variation in outside of the top 4 quarterbacks. There's a lot of variation in where quarterbacks line up in terms of fantasy finishes. So, in our bold predictions episode for the fantasy forecast, one of my bold predictions is that Dak Prescott and Brock Purdy are both going to finish in the top 10 this year. Dak Prescott has an arc where he finishes very well every other year, and Brock Purdy has had a number 6 finish in the past, and he's looking at the easiest schedule in the NFL. So I feel like those guys can be taken much, much later, and I can stock up on some of the bigger scorers. And it's it's just kind of how I roll.
There you have it. So for me, when I talk about quarterbacks, I like to have an elite one to start. And if I can't get that, then yeah, I'm on the same wavelength as you, Bigs. I may go a little bit sooner than what you have portrayed as getting like a Purdy or a Prescott a little bit later on. I may look at making a stab here if I'm in your position as far as maybe picking up my first quarterback because of how I see, them just drying up really fast. I've done about 5 startups in the last, month or so, and I've seen quite the run happen in the 4th round and the back half of the 3rd. So when I've been picked on that end, I find myself being, troublesome of getting, those 2 guys at the end of it. But, you're making the risk here. I'm excited to see how your team shakes out. Now you got, another top end talent in JSN as your top wide receiver. I'd be pretty comfortable with that headed into my draft here.
Yeah, I love JSN in that position. The Seattle Seahawks, I mean, certainly we have 2 teams that are already 3 wide receivers deep. They don't have quarterbacks either. So quarterbacks aren't drying up. They're still going to be available. But I have an advantage at the running back position, which has, that was kind of my play. We only have a couple teams right now that are sitting on 2 quarterbacks. So they didn't exactly dry up. JSN, the Seattle Seahawks trading away DK Metcalf and bringing in Sam Darnold after trading away Geno Smith have certainly secured the runway for Jaxson, Smith-Njigba to be an elite wide receiver in the NFL over the next few years. And we saw that a little bit last year, and he's going to be an even higher target earner this year with a quarterback who sustained Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson last year and has the potential to keep JSN in that top 7 or 8 range.
I gotcha. All right. So, I agree with you here with Jason. I think he's got quite the opportunity here. We know, Cooper Kupp, his health isn't quite there. He's missed a lot of time over the last couple seasons. And, Jason with this Clint Kubiak offense, I think it can be a very good benefit for him headed into a system like that. Now we're going to see, a mixture of guys picking, youth, and then you got some builds here that are a little bit more of the win now. Now, talk to us a little bit about the win now strategy, Biggs. Is that kind of out of the window for you? Are you always looking at win now and explain your thought processes when you're drafting a startup here? Because a lot of guys will punt their first year in hopes of gaining some future capital, maybe a couple firsts in the next year's draft class, and then punting this year in order to get a bunch of draft capital saved up. Me, I'm not of that opinion because, I'm always wanting to win at some point. This is still winning fantasy football, and championships are what we play for. So explain your thought process behind that.
Oh no. I was going to take Brock Purdy there. No, I have evolved over the years. I was like a lot of people when I first started playing Dynasty Fantasy. I kind of had this idea that uh, you build a juggernaut for the future, and somebody along the way presented the idea: don't be afraid to win in year 1, and you can. There are a couple different types of startup strategies. There's win now. There's one called productive struggle. That's basically where you are trying to draft very young guys who may not produce now, but they will produce down the road, so that in a couple of years, all of a sudden, your guys are all producing. And those that I had drafted that way have tended to be the most frustrating because you wind up taking chances on a guy that you see that's uber talented like Roshan Johnson, and then waiting for his breakout that never comes. So I have started to completely avoid that strategy and go for a win now approach. And um, I'm upset that I got sniped on Purdy, but JJ McCarthy he definitely has the upside to be a top 12 quarterback this year. So I'm not unhappy about that.
No, I wouldn't be either. I mean, that's a good fault having your lap there. Seeing, now these running backs starting to really flow off the board here now, because maybe the run that you had started, but I'm pretty comfortable now in my quarterback, so I'm gonna be able to start smashing some of these positions where I see some value here, and I'm hoping when it gets back to me in this round here that my guy's still available, a guy that's been steaming up draft boards, a guy that's been, getting hyped up all off season, and I think his situation is prime for a year one rookie breakout. And I'm excited to see if he can fall into my laps in the end of this turn here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my guy, Mekabuka. I think that he is a guy that is has the potential here to come into the lineup and really make a stamp right away in his first year as a pro. I got him pegged as a top 24 wide receiver already in 2025, and I see his value becoming very similar to what we see here with JSN and Lab McConkey headed into this year. I see him in the same range around that 2-3 turn, and I'm excited to see his future and what it brings to the table here, bigz.
Yeah, I love Emeka Buka, and um, I'm super excited to see how his career arc goes. I think he and Jalen McMillan are going to be a vicious 1-2 punch for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers moving forward. Uh, I'm not willing to count out Mike Evans from 110 plus targets again this year. There's also Jalen McMillan in that offense, but I think that Egbuka, especially with his draft capital, slides directly into the wide receiver 2 slot in Tampa. Uh, I had hopes that Jalen McMillan's talent would elevate him to that level, but the fact that the Buccaneers drafted Egbuka where they did shows that they don't think that McMillan has that ceiling, and Egbuka's their guy. So yeah, Egbuka all the way.
Now, I got a question for you. We've seen some interesting contracts fall down and cascade over the last, month or so. And I'm talking about running back contracts. We saw Kyron Williams sign a big one, and then also James Cook over the last 24 hours here. What's your take on, the new landscape that has kind of been brought onto us after last year, where we saw abnormal amount of running backs make it through the full season. Now it looks like they're starting to get paid, whereas like 2 years ago, we remember the contracts that Saquon and Josh Jacobs were really struggling to get, and now it looks like they've opened up the floodgates to these contracts. Now, are you more on the thinking that these guys are going to have a longevity now with the advances in medical and stuff like that? Like, are these guys hitting their age cliff a lot later now?
It seems to be that way. I look at a guy like Josh Jacobs who's going into, I want to say, year 7, and I have no. I mean, he's been, except for 1 year, 1 season where he was dealing with a turf toe or ankle. He's been an absolute workhorse. We've seen Saquon Barkley take on a huge workload last year. Same with Derrick Henry. These guys are lasting a lot longer, and nutrition is better, conditioning is better. Medical advancements in sports science have been fantastic for these careers. So I don't think 30 is over anymore for some of these guys.
Agreed. Now, George Pickens just comes off the board, a guy that's been kind of steaming up lately, a guy that, if you think that Dak Prescott's going to have another huge year in 2025, you must have high hopes for George Pickens there, Biggs. Do you think he's going to light it up? Is he going to be, a top 12 wide receiver like some people are predicting him to be?
No. I I am definitely high on George Pickens, but I've never seen George Pickens as a well, sorry, let me take that back. Last year, I thought George Pickens had definitely had the potential to be a top 24 guy. I don't think he fits the profile of being a top 12 guy, especially if he's a wide receiver 2 on that team. But I do see Prescott having a big year.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I agree with that. I think the writing's been on the wall. I could see this being a very good year for Dak Prescott. I see this coming back as long as he could stay healthy and that wide receiver room could stay healthy. He could throw for 45 touchdowns.
Yeah, that's not out of the range of outcomes.
Yeah. So now I'm at a spot here where still looking for a tight end. Not quite ready to draft one yet. I see some value still here on the board, and I'm going to go with one of my late guys. Getting him in the 7th is still a good play for me. I'm not too worried about the quarterback situation because I think Devontae Adams can be, good anywhere you put him. And I still think he's got a couple of years left to anchor my wide receiver core. Now, I'm going to be looking at maybe solidifying that room too here. And I got quite a bit of youth. And I also have some veteran depth that are going to be wide receiver ones in their lineup. So I'm pretty comfortable with where I'm at right now. And looking ahead, on the turd, I'll be looking at maybe hitting up a tight end. When are you looking for a tight end here, Biggs? You got two quarterbacks now, three running backs, two wide receivers. You said you see a lot of uh, value in the mid to later rounds with wide receivers. So is this a spot here where you see your value? I know you're high on a guy like Mark Andrews. You mentioned him being like an 8 or 9 round pick, kind of around the turn here. What's your thoughts on tight end at this stage? Is there still a
Well,
lot left on the board?
apparently I'm punting. Um, so that's just kind of how this one has played out. I obviously, as a Raiders fan, really, really like Brock Bowers. I think he's definitely an anchor, but I think tight end is uh, kind of it's a position that you can definitely take your time with. Um, there are a couple guys that I really need to come out of this draft with, and Jaxson Dart is one of them. I posted last night on Twitter. He's currently my number one owned player on Sleeper. Uh, I have him in just short of 40% of my leagues, um, and I have some. There are some tight ends in the later rounds who I believe have the potential to have pretty good years. David Njoku will be available a little bit later. Travis Kelsey is still out there. Jonnu Smith had a fantastic year, and if they use Pat Fryermuth in a blocking situation and use Jonnu Smith as kind of a big slot, the way Brock Bowers is, Jonnu Smith can have a big year. Evan Ingram is another one. These guys are all still on the board. Mason Taylor, who I believe is going to be a top 10 tight end this year, is going to be available in a little bit, and I'm here for it. So tight end is something that I wouldn't prioritize in the first 8 or 9 rounds in a startup.
Yeah, I mean, unless you can get a guy that falls like a Bowers or a McBride, and their
Or
values
Kittle.
is too good to pass up, then definitely I'm on the verge of waiting here. I like this round here, 9 or 10, to be looking at these tight ends and to go with the best value. You mentioned a guy like David Njoku, who's really high on my rostership. If you look at a lot of my throughout my leagues, yeah, maybe he's not destined to play a full season, but when he's in the lineup, he's a guy that is heavily targeted and a guy that finishes in the top five when he's in the game there. So I'm looking at him. Now I'm looking at, solidifying potentially my wide receiver room here. I see another guy that's a potentially a top 20 wide receiver in the right situation. And I think Calvin Ridley is walking right into a great situation here with a new quarterback that's going to breathe some better life. He's well more talented than whatever Will Levis was last year. And I think Calvin Ridley is in a spot to smash. People are comparing him to this year's Terry McLaurin. I don't think they're far off here. And Calvin Ridley staying healthy with a good connection with Cam Ward that's already started in camp could definitely be a top 20 wide receiver. And so I'm drafting it as so.
100% agree with you.
Awesome. Now, Biggs, you've got a decision here. You got your Jaxson Dart. I love that pick. I think in a lot of startups I've been in, he's not gotten that far down the list. So that's an automatic value here for a guy that potentially next year will be probably in the first 3 rounds of a dynasty startup. When you look at the guys that are there right now, I see him along the same trajectory as what a Drake May did last year, where, may not start the first bit of the season, but maybe by week 5 or 6, he's entrenched in the lineup, given some growing pains and how weak his supporting cast is around him. He does have Malik Neighbors, so I think it's going to be a hyper targeted situation there. And as soon as Jaxson Dart gets the keys, I think there's going to be quite a people on the Dart train, if you know what I mean, Biggs.
Absolutely. Did I just? Oh, come on. Um, I'm crashing out right now. Can't you tell?
Yeah. getting some,
I
getting
thought
some big,
Jacoby Myers was going to be there,
but he wasn't. So now what are
but
you thinking?
he
How
was
do you
not.
pivot?
I pivot to somebody who I believe is going to be the wide receiver one on the team with the easiest schedule in the NFL, and that's Juwan Jennings.
Quite fitting here that coach picks his guy Kyle Pitts. Now, what's your thought on Kyle Pitts for 2025 and his newfound quarterback? From what I hear, Kirk Cousins is fully healthy. He's looking good in camp. Is there a possibility here potentially that Kirk Cousins could be the starter in Atlanta, or is it just some people trying to steam some
Who
stories up?
said that?
Well, I'm hearing that Penix has missed a couple throws, and
Oh God. Okay.
Kurt's looked good in camp.
Here's the thing, and if you follow me on Twitter, you have seen me say this on quite a few occasions. This is your occasional reminder that nothing matters until August 26th. August 26th, the 53-man rosters will be released. All of the cuts will happen. We'll know what the rosters look like. We'll have accurate depth charts. The preseason will be over. We'll be rolling into week one in the NFL. And at that time, Michael Penix is going to be the quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons. And everything else is just noise, clickbait, engagement drivel. It's just Michael Penix is the future in Atlanta, and he's also the present. Just because he had a couple of bad throws in camp doesn't mean that the job is being taken away from him. Kirk Cousins is the quarterback too in Atlanta.
Agreed. And
August
I just
26th.
yeah. So unless there's an injury that happens, and then we're looking at here being, this is a Penix situation. They gave up, top round draft capital for him. So yeah, I'm not scared off whatsoever of
But we
that
won't know
situation.
that until August 26th.
And we will know that till August 26th. All right, my last pick of the draft, and I'm looking at potentially, I'm going to go with another running back.
I have sad right now.
You have sad right now?
I have sad right now.
Why is that?
Because typically, especially in a mock draft, if I only have one more pick, I'm taking Lan Larison. And he just started to emerge and broke his foot.
Yeah, your guy. That's unfortunate. All right, so we're
But
round.
hey, I didn't make it through a show without saying his name.
Now, we'll do an assessment on this draft as it wraps up here. I see a lot of teams with 2-3 quarterback builds here, which is pretty normal. We're only in the top half of a dynasty startup, so we're here to fill our full roster at this stage. Um, if there's a tight end here left on the board here, Biggs, that's left for our viewers. I saw you pick Mason Taylor. You mentioned him being the potential to finish as a top 10 tight end as a sleeper pick, headed into this year. There's, growing talk of the chemistry between him and Justin Fields. There's only one target within that offense outside of Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson. And yeah, I like that call. And then another guy in a very similar situation, if you ask me, is Elijah Arroyo, a guy that you picked with your last pick there, Biggs. He just got some great news a week and a half ago with the release of Noah Fant, and now looks like he's gonna, have the inside shot at getting that overall starter situation there in Seattle. With the opportunity of Cooper Kupp, aging, may not look the same, potential for injury, something like that happens. We're going to see a door wide open for Elijah Arroyo. You want to touch base on that? And is he a kind of guy that you're targeting later on in drafts?
Absolutely. I am super excited about this tight end class. I have so many shares of Mason Taylor, uh, Elijah Arroyo, Rondé Gadsden. Those three guys, I think, all have the opportunity to immediately contribute from the later rounds. Mason Taylor, I think, winds up as a top 10 tight end. My rankings have shifted a little bit in assessing the Chicago Bears offense, and on the fantasy forecast, one of my bold predictions is that no Chicago pass catcher will finish in the top 10 at their position except for Colston Loveland. Um, that's a new one. That's a new one. So we'll be talking about that on that other show. Oronde Gadsden, I think, has the opportunity to immediately start in the Chargers system, and Mason Taylor, I think, is going to be a top 10 tight end because Cole Kmet was a top 10 tight end with Justin Fields. The only target competition he really has is Garrett Wilson. So I love both of those guys. And then again, Elijah Arroyo, hyper athletic. He was like, the apple of everybody's eye at the Senior Bowl. And he goes into a situation where he's in an offense that is from the Shanahan tree. He's got Clint Kubiak. He's got Jaxson Smith-Njigba and Sam Darnold, who was with Kevin O'Connell last year in Minnesota. TJ Hawkinson, a focal point of that offense as an athletic pass-catching tight end. Clint Kubiak from that same tree. They're going to be used in the same way, and Elijah Arroyo is going to be there immediately. And the Seahawks knew that, which is why they got rid of they let Fant go. AJ Barner is a blocking tight end. He's not going to compete for tight end targets with Elijah Arroyo. Elijah Arroyo is going to be a rookie tight end making plays.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Biggs, and I like your analysis on both those players, Mason Taylor and Elijah Arroyo here. Now, let's get into some MVPs of this draft.
Well,
Can't
of
pick
course, I won the draft. I've never lost a mock draft in my entire life, and I keep my crown. So, but there are some other builds. There are some other teams that I enjoy.
Why don't you get us started off with your favorite team out there, and then I can follow it up with mine.
How about you start? Oh, never mind. I'll start.
Okay.
So looking around, what's a good one? Grindberg started with Jaden Daniels, Drake London, love it. Amika Ibuka, Devontae Adams, Geno Smith, love that as your backup quarterback. He should be starting at some point probably for you. And then who else do I really like? Well, Team 6. You have to love Team 6. Auto drafted Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, Devon Achane, T. Higgins, Chase Brown, Tyreek Hill in the 7th, James Conner, Travis Kelce, and Evan Ingram. That's a contender year
Mhm.
one. Way to go, auto drafting.
It wasn't an auto draft. It was somebody else before. I guess they might have just left at some point. They started that draft off, and I kind of like that value there later on with the tight ends there. You know what I mean? Like if you waited that long, still getting some value there with Travis Kelce, Evan Ingram. Both those guys can be startable in 0.75 premium. I really do like that team quite a bit actually, with some value there at running back. Chase Brown in the 5th. Terry McLaurin in the 6th. I just really like that situation there quite a bit. Not so deep on the quarterback, but when you got an anchor like Jalen Hurts, you can have some volatility there, knowing that you have one of the top 5 scorers in Dynasty when you got Jalen Hurts there, and I think he's got some solidification for years to come as well there. So I do really like that team. Another
Whoever
team,
that FF whatever, I can't read the whole thing.
FF Fred
FF Fred with
or
the
Nerd.
Chargers logo.
Yep.
Obviously, he's got Bijan as his anchor. Nico Collins. I love the Drake May and Justin Fields combination.
Mhm.
George Kittle. DK is the wide receiver one in Pittsburgh. So he in an Arthur Smith system, he's not going to command 150 targets, but he'll get a lot. I like DeAndre Swift for this year. I love Braylon Allen for the future, and Jacoby Myers, 110, 120 targets, lock it in with Geno Smith. I like that one.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, there's some good builds here now. As far as a guy that you needed to get in your lineup, Biggs. You talked a little bit about Jaxson Dart, but when you're scoping the landscape of Dynasty, who are some guys at the top of your head that you're looking at, not leaving a draft without? I think in the first round, I could just maybe guess you want to get out of there with at least one of your Raiders.
Yeah, I mean it's it's pretty much a combination of Genty and Bowers. Um, but there are quite a few. I really hate not having Garrett Wilson. I think he's too much of a value. He's going to be a top 10 wide receiver. Jaxson Dart, of course, I think he's starting by mid-year, and he's got that cheat code and a big arm. I don't like leaving without a backup, like a handcuff running back, like a Taj Brooks, DJ Giddens, and Juwan Jennings. Juwan Jennings is going to lead the 49ers as their wide receiver one this year. I really love the situation that he's in. And then in the really, really late rounds, I love the Will Shipley tap. Will Shipley has an extremely athletic profile. He has the ability to do everything on the field. He was a pretty good pass catcher at Clemson. And Saquon Barkley, if something were to happen to him, we know A.J. Dillon isn't efficient. The Philadelphia Eagles will be forced to use Will Shipley, and I like him as a handcuff when you're in the way later rounds. And then one of the Raiders' speed guys, D'onte Thornton, Trey Tucker, they're going to be able to take the top off the defense. I have huge expectations for D'onte Thornton.
Yeah, I like that call, Biggs. You want to talk a little bit more about your alpha guy in Las Vegas, because when we're getting in, especially in the later halves of these drafts where we're looking for some value, we're looking for guys that maybe aren't super well known. D'onte Thornton is a guy that was drafted, I think, in the fifth round by the fourth round by the Raiders, behind second round draft pick Jack Bech. And he's getting, more steam in camp. He's the alpha, it looks like, that X receiver, that big bodied guy that can maybe get the field stretched to open things up for Brock Bowers. Talk about D'onte Thornton and what his play is with the Raiders, and how you see his role, and if you see him, breaking out this year, and where you project him to finish.
So it's D'onte Thornton, not Deontay. A lot of people that make that mistake. So he was a value pick for the Raiders in the fourth round. Jack Bech was their second round play, but pre training camp, through the rookie mini camp and the OTAs, one of the things that we kind of knew about Jack Bech is that he is very, very similar in profile to Jakobi Meyers. The Raiders love his profile. He is very physical. He gets downfield and blocks for running backs. He's very active as a blocker, and he did that a lot. I mean, he was recruited as a tight end by LSU. He led the LSU pass catchers in yards and touchdowns among Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. and those guys, right? So I think he was more of a futures pick. They have an analog with Jakobi Meyers. Jakobi Meyers is going to be in a contract situation next year, and if they feel like they can move on, Jack Bech steps in, and he's that other inside receiver to go along with Brock Bowers. D'onte Thornton was a play that I think was a little bit more of a value and a little bit better forward thinking for Chip Kelly. He's 6'4", 8, something like that, pretty much 6'5", and he ran a 4.3 40. So now they have two guys on the outside, Trey Tucker, who led the league in wind sprints last year, and D'onte Thornton. D'onte Thornton is a legitimate pass catcher. He was interviewed a couple weeks ago, and he said, "I've been running the entire route tree since I was in high school." The smack on him was that he was coming from Tennessee, and Tennessee only had him really run two different types of routes. I think it was 40% comebacks and then a bunch of goes and posts. That was basically it. But if you go back and you watch his Oregon film, he was running the entire route tree. So he can do it all on the field, and he can do it in a similar way to some of our historic hits, like Megatron, Calvin Johnson, and Julio Jones and Randy Moss, like super big guys that are super fast, can outjump everybody as long as they can use their speed to get into open space. They can use their body to go up and catch above the defender's catch point. I mean, he's going to be a cheat code. You give him a couple years, especially in Dynasty. Give him a couple years at his value to put on 20 pounds, and he is exactly the physical profile of Calvin Johnson and with 4.3 speed. We know he can run the entire route tree, and even as a rookie, he's going to be losing defenders behind him, and Geno Smith is a top 3 deep ball quarterback in the NFL. So he is going to fall into a wide receiver 3 or 4 finish, and at where you're able to take him, I mean, you can't leave your draft without him.
Yeah, I like that call. Some other guys that have been getting some steam up the draft boards, guys that you're talking about later on. There's some camp hype. And what's your thoughts on the whole Houston Texans backfield? It's been a mess. Joe Mixon has been rumored to be, potentially missing 6 weeks to potentially their whole season. That's what some of the rumors from some reputable doctors that have been, on the Twitter sphere talking about that injury. Nick Chubb obviously was brought in last minute. He didn't sign anywhere else. He signed pretty late. Now it looks like an indicator that, Joe Mixon could be, out for an extended period of time. Do you think that Nick Chubb's got the juice to carry the load here, or is this a Woody Mark situation? What's your thoughts on that backfield? Are you staying completely clear? And what do you have for dynasty managers that are looking at that Woody Marks pick? And is it worth the dart throw? Because he's getting steamed up pretty hard now, and it's looking like less of a value now.
Excuse me. Yeah. There are no undraftable players. There are just undraftable draft positions. I don't hate the Nick Chubb tap. I think at the right price, if you're not relying, basically what we're talking about is the difference between relying on somebody to especially in a startup, when we make a pick, we're relying on a couple of different things. We're relying on them to produce immediately at a relevant level, B, present that potentiality for that production in the future. Nick Chubb may produce some value, but you don't want to rely on him. And Woody Marks, I don't love the profile. There are a handful, 5 or 6 other running backs that I would take before I even thought about Woody Marks. That backfield is an absolute mess. But in the right round, if I already have 3 fairly well established running backs that I'm going to be able to comfortably rely on for points, I'll take Chubb if other positions are filled out and stuff and he's still there. Otherwise, that's not a situation I want to hold a lot of shares of.
Okay. Now, one more thing. We got about 10 minutes left before we wrap up the show here, Big. A lot of talk going on in the fantasy space right now about 2 players on the same team, looking at Jamison Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now, they're both getting a lot of steam right now as far as, where they are being drafted in Dynasty. And are you buying the smoke on Jamison, coming right up and almost going toe for toe here with Amon-Ra this year?
Absolutely not. What are you talking about? One of my favorite nicknames popped yesterday on Twitter when somebody showed a camp highlight of Amon-Ra St. Brown and said Amon-Ra St. Highlight. I was like, that's really good. I love Jamison Williams. I'm drafting him everywhere that I possibly can. He's not the focal point of that offense. Amon-Ra St. Brown may slide a little bit, but he's not out of the top 15 wide receivers. There is no change in Detroit that is going to be the death knell for Amon-Ra St. Brown. He may have a top 10 finish. Okay. There are other wide receivers that I would, if in the first round, that I would rather draft before I drafted Amon-Ra St. Brown. I don't think Jamison Williams is going to command the target share that Amon-Ra St. Brown does. And in a PPR league, that's super important. Jamison Williams can have all the 15-yard catch averages that he wants, score some touchdowns down the field, pick up, increase his target share, all that stuff. But he's not gonna surpass Amon-Ra St. Brown in that offense. It's just, that's not the role that he plays. But again, I love Jamison Williams. I love the jump that he's going to make. And I tweeted, some of the, like, my flag plants, Jamison Williams, go draft him. So I love him, but he's not going to be the wide receiver one in Detroit as far as fantasy points
Yeah,
are
yeah,
concerned without an injury.
yeah. I totally agree with that. I do have my fair share of Jameson Williams. I think he's going to have, continue that late season surge, turn it into a breakout, and I think this is a situation here that is worth monitoring. There, another one that's worth monitoring here, Biggs, is a couple suspensions.
Hang on. I just found the tweet. Guys I'm trading for rookie picks, Jaden Reed. Guys I'm adding when I acquire picks, Quentin Johnston, Will Shipley, Jamison Williams. So he's absolutely been a dynasty target of mine throughout this whole last 8 months.
Okay, so
okay, sorry.
What are we doing with Rashee Rice? He went here up in the 4th round, which is pretty normal for a dynasty startup at this stage of the game. Some of that suspension has already been baked into that price when you look at where his, metrics have been when he was playing. Now we also have Jordan Addison, missing 3 games. Different situations here, but when we have suspensions looming, what kind of advice would you give our viewers when looking at them, seeing them in the queue, and then are you afraid to tap them, or are you gung ho on getting these guys under your on your fantasy team?
That's a very unfair question, Mike, and I'm not happy about it. No, you know how I feel about certain wide receiver rooms, and the Kansas City Chiefs are one of them.
Mhm.
With Rashee Rice is a great player, but I don't think he's bankable as a wide receiver one. Just not That's not the way the Chiefs do things. You're a Chiefs fan. You know that a player can have a huge game one week and then disappear for another 2 weeks because the defense that they're going up against is now game planning for the guy that had the big game. And guess what? The Chiefs are too smart for that. So they're going to run the ball more, or they're going to go to Travis Kelce more, or they're going to throw the ball down the field more. So I tend to avoid that. The other one is Jordan Addison. And this is an interesting case for me because I've never been a big Jordan Addison fan. Going into his rookie draft, there were a couple things that we knew. We knew that Jordan Addison was going to be the top scoring rookie of that wide receiver class, but Jaxson, Smith-Njigba was going to be down the line the better of them. And Quentin Johnston, I think we kind of knew wasn't really going to pan out the way that he was being drafted in rookie drafts. So those were like kind of known set pieces. Jordan Addison immediately was in a situation where he was the wide receiver too. The Vikings aren't moving on from Justin Jefferson. There have to be very special cases where in a draft, I'm drafting a wide receiver too, if there are still wide receiver ones of their team, of their respective teams on the board. For example, you mentioned during the draft Calvin Ridley. If Calvin Ridley and Jordan Addison are next to each other, I'm drafting Calvin Ridley every single time because he is the number one target getter. Doesn't matter to me if it's a productive offense or not. The number one target getter is the guy that I'm going to be pushing the button for. So Justin Jefferson is the number one guy. Jordan Addison is a talented wide receiver too. Now we know that he is going to be missing time because of his suspension, which we knew was coming. So all this whole draft season, I have been tapping Ty Felton over and over and over again because Jalen Nailor is not going to replace Jordan Addison. And you got now Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson. Ty Felton, wowing in camp, he's going to step right in, and he will be the guy that will take the Jordan Addison share. Moving forward, Jordan Addison may come back, but Ty Felton is good enough that he's going to demand a higher target share. That the only people you're going to take away from at that point are Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson, because you're not taking away from Justin Jefferson. So I'm not huge on Jordan Addison. I have had him very faded because I knew that suspension was coming. Rushy Rice, maybe next year.
All right. Well, one last thing. We got some breaking news from Jordan Schultz, and it looks like
We don't
prosecute.
break news from Jordan Schultz.
Well, anyways, running back Quinshon Judkins will not face any formal charges, it sounds like. So people getting the discount, looks like they got a good discount on Judkins if he does return to the team. You're wearing your Cleveland Browns hat. What's your thought on that?
My moral self hates it. My shareholder self, whew,
Yeah, totally.
we escaped that one. So it, I have mixed feelings because I'm kind of like I'm torn because like don't be a violent person, but as far as this opens the door for Cleveland to now go ahead, give him his rookie contract, get him signed, get him into camp. I'm sure he's been working out. He didn't miss time because of an injury. He missed time because of an issue. So he has been able to stay in condition and stuff like that. I think they work him into the fold very quickly. And as far as like his involvement in training camp, we'll get to see some of what he puts together on film in the preseason games. And it'll be nice to see him, nice to see Dylan Sampson, nice to see Jerome Ford, and kind of analyze what the three of them look like film wise. But we watched Quinshon Judkins all last year through at Ohio State, and we kind of know his explosive ability and that he's a thumper. And I am now again excited because he's going. The contract situation was the big turnoff for me because he hadn't signed the contract yet, and that left the Browns open to, if something had happened, they could have just like let him go till next year's draft, not signed his contract. No, they hold the rights. They could have done it until next year or traded it away or whatever. But I think he's going to be accelerated over the next couple weeks. I mean, he's got 3 weeks or 18 days, something like that, to get himself ready. He had been participating in OTAs and rookie minicamp and everything. He's got the playbook. He knows the system, and he does, as long as he shows that Dylan Sampson is the third down satellite, and he is, and Judkins is going to be more efficient than Jerome Ford. I think by week 2 or 3, he's the RB1.
Yep, there it is. All right, folks. From the Fantasy Sports Advice Network and the Undroppables, we just wrapped up our mock draft series here for FSAN.
Your shoes are ugly, draft. I don't like what you're wearing.
Stop mocking it. Stop mocking it, Biggs.
Okay.
All right. Well, it's been a great time. Biggs and I just finished a weekend trip to Canton, Ohio, where we're at the Fantasy Football Expo.
Very eventful.
We had a great time. Stayed in the same Airbnb together, and it was great to connect with him. It was great seeing the whole FSAN family and some undroppable people as well. So had a great time. Biggs, let's plug our stuff.
I like pickles. No, go to fantasysportsadvice.com. Go ahead and get your pro membership. We've got open jersey leagues, including Jaxson Smith-Njigba jersey league. If you can beat me, you get the Jaxson Smith-Njigba jersey. Mike has a jersey league. You have to be a pro member at fantasysportsadvice.com. So go to there, get that. There's also Dynasty Pulse merch, Fantasy Forecast merch. Watch us on Fantasy Forecast. And then right here on the Undroppables, I had a little show I called Unhinged, where I kind of, talked, like gave hot takes and got angry about stuff. I'm re-rolling the show, but now with 3 co-hosts. That'll be launching next Friday, the 22nd of August, and with Chev and Jono and Colt Snowdy, some Undroppables and some other guys. And it's just going to be a fun show of like, a little bit of analysis, a little bit of pop culture, talking about movies and music and football and whatever. Just, dudes talking about bro stuff. And that'll be on the Undroppables live 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern time every Friday. And so tune in for that if you are on the Undroppables. Other than that, Fantasy Sports Advice Network, go to the merch store. There's so many good things like the Tears sweatshirt that looks like the Bears logo. It's so funny. And the Dynasty Pulse hat like Mike has, and the Fantasy Sports Advice Network sweatshirt like Mike has on, and also the Fantasy Forecast hat like I wear sometimes on the show, and all that stuff.
And
Was that good?
that was perfect. And we'll have our co-host back. We'll see Chev, Coach Retzlaff, and Schulte back next week when we do our tight end tiers. So from all of us on the network, let's
Tight ends. Tight ends.
peace out.